This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Ciao, amici. Welcome back to Travel Italia, the podcast that helps you travel smarter, deeper, and with more confidence through Italy. I'm Catherine, your host, and today we're talking about traveling to Italy with kids. And before you panic, just know that it's absolutely doable. With a little planning, patience, and realistic expectations, your family trip can be one of the most memorable adventures you'll ever take. So, in this episode, I'll share 3 different topics. The first one is just universal family tips. Secondly, age specific strategies for young kids, school age children, and teens. And thirdly, family friendly highlights in Rome, Florence, Venice, and Milan. So let's dive in. All right. Universal tips for all ages. These are just things that I have done while I'm traveling with my family, and I hope they are helpful for you. First is choosing apartments or agriturismos over hotel rooms. I know that some of you love to stay in hotel rooms, and that's great. But really, when you're traveling with a family, apartments or agriturismos make more sense. You just have more space for everyone, a kitchen, laundry. I think if everyone has a little bit more space and not crammed into a tiny hotel room, it makes for a happier family. And of course, you have the flexibility of making your own meals, doing your own laundry, putting down cranky toddlers for naps, and just having more space. So that's my first tip for you. My second is snacks are survival tools. So keep granola bars, fruit handy. Italian meal times are later, so lunch tends to be about 1 to 2 p.m. Dinner often doesn't even start until 7 or 8 p.m. So many restaurants, depending where you're at, won't even serve dinner until 7 o'clock. Now, if you're in a touristy area, you usually won't have a problem finding a restaurant. But in general, just a reminder, restaurants close after lunch. If they have a lunch service, they end about 3 o'clock. And the norm in Italy is for them to reopen between 7 and 8 p.m. for dinner. Okay, so that is the norm. So what does that mean for you and your family? It means that you should have snacks on hand for those times in between, because you don't want your kids to be hangry, of course. The third tip I have for you is just plan for Italian meal habits. What are those habits? Well, breakfast is usually just coffee and a pastry. So if your kids are used to, or if you're used to, eggs or protein, then really plan on cooking in your rental or bring protein bars. Some hotels, if you choose to stay in a hotel, do offer a continental breakfast, a breakfast buffet that does include some protein. So if you're staying in a hotel, do look for one that offers a continental breakfast. Also, keep in mind that Italians eat a lot of carbs, and carbs are glorious, but, your body may not be used to eating so many carbs. If your little one is not used to eating so many carbs, you do need to make an effort to have some fruit, some vegetables to balance out the carbs so there's no ensuing problems, if you know what I mean. All right, my fourth tip is don't overdo it. Okay, resist the urge to cram everything into one day. Keep in mind that walking 20,000 steps isn't unusual when you visit cities like Rome or Florence or Venice. So build in some breaks and avoid what I call kamikaze itineraries. So that is itineraries where you think you're going to see everything in 1 or 2 days. And so keep your expectations realistic. And here I'll tell you a story about the first time I went to Rome. We were, of course, tremendously excited to be there. And our son, the youngest, had studied ancient Rome not too long before visiting. So we were excited, ready, and we started off at the Roman Forum. We spent a couple of hours there. It was, I think, July, and so it was hot. Even though we got started at an early hour, by the time we were done with the Roman Forum, it was warm. It was very warm, and my youngest was already tired, but we pressed on. We moved on to the Colosseum, and I made the mistake of not getting the skip the line ticket. So we stood in line for a bit, finally got in, and finally made our way to view the arena and started exploring a bit. And he had had it at that point. He had completely had it. So we ended up just spending very little time in the Colosseum and going back to our apartment to just rest a bit. That's a mistake that I made in not considering his limitations and his needs while traveling. Of course, as adults, I could have kept going all day, but it was hot, he was tired, and he had had enough. So I share this with you to just remind you that traveling, especially with younger ones, they have limitations, they have physical limitations. And we need to remember that and take that into account when we're traveling. My fifth tip is comfortable shoes are essential. Essential for your children, but really for the whole family, for everyone. It may sound pretty obvious, but I'm always shocked at how people don't bring the right kind of footwear to explore Italy, because in general, you just do a lot of walking, especially in historic city centers. So like I just mentioned, 20,000 steps is pretty normal. And if you don't have the right footwear, comfortable footwear, not flip-flops, not thin sandals, you want something that you can walk for miles in. So just make sure you have good footwear for your children, because cobblestones plus long walks equals cranky kids. So we don't want that. All right, my sixth tip is keep your expectations low. What do I mean by that? Well, your kids may not be wowed by ancient history or Renaissance art the way you are. They may not express the same interest. Okay, maybe you are an art lover and you're in Florence and you're in the Uffizi, and you could spend all day going from room to room admiring all of the beauty that there is to behold. I mean, that's like taking a bath in art. It's wonderful. But if you have children with you, or teenagers even, they just may not be into it as much as you are, and that's okay. All right, my seventh tip is gelato is motivation. Yes, it's dessert, but it's also the best bargaining chip in Italy. So use it as motivation, use it to bargain or to bribe, use it to your advantage. Let's move on to tips by age group. Okay, so if you're traveling with young children, I'm thinking under 6 years old, you would want to take with you some kind of lightweight stroller or carrier, like those backpack carriers. And keep in mind that you're going to cover a lot of ground and you're going to walk on tons of cobblestones. So pick your stroller wisely. Next is piazzas and parks. When you come across a piazza or a park and you're with your little one, let them run around, let them get the wiggles out. Unfortunately, parks are few and far between in downtown Italian cities, but they do exist. So if you come across one, just take a breather, let them feed the pigeons or what have you. All right, next Plan on earlier dinners, obviously, with your little ones. Like I just mentioned, dinner is late in Italy. You don't want to torture your young children with making them wait until 7, 8 o'clock. This is where having an apartment over a hotel is really, really helpful. So you can easily pick up something to take to your hotel or to your apartment, cook something at your apartment, whatever. Just the ability to feed your children earlier and not to make them wait. Let's move on to my tips for school-aged kids, 6 through 12-year-old. For this age group, I suggest turn sightseeing into games. So some kind of scavenger hunt or keeping a sketchbook and having a theme. Whenever they see, I don't know, a bridge, they can sketch the bridge or whatever they're into. Or choosing kid-focused tours. There are some companies that offer kid-focused tours in the major cities of Italy, and we'll talk more about that later. Again, for school-age kids, you just want to be careful, not overdo it. Just don't try to cram so much into one day. Also, I think giving this age group small jobs to involve them in the process of traveling is a great idea. So they're not just following their parents around, right? Teach them how to order gelato in Italian. Give them a camera so they can take their own photos, or they can keep a journal, something for them to do as you're traveling. All right, now tips for teenagers. I think it's important to give them a voice. Let them pick one activity per day. I don't know if you want to do it per day, every other day, but let them have a voice in what is happening. Also, offer them safe independence. Let them explore a district or a piazza with check-in times. In general, Italy's very safe, especially in downtown historic city centers. Yes, there's crime, but thankfully, shootings are extremely rare. I think the most you would have to worry about is pickpockets. So you want to educate your teenagers about the dangers of pickpockets. But in general, letting them wander off for a few blocks, giving them some clear guidelines, offering them independence. Or if you want to take a rest in a piazza or sit and sip on a glass of wine while they visit some shops near you, that's perfectly safe. And also with teenagers, I think prioritizing experiences. So doing things like cooking classes, bike tours, night walks, or food tours. Those are great, memorable experiences for teenagers. My next tip for teenagers is to give them a budget for souvenirs. So whether this is money they have earned themselves or money that you've given them, I think it teaches them independence and saves arguments and creates a bit of excitement. They know they get to pick something while they're traveling, and so it actively engages them in that search. You could also do this with school-age kids as well. Give them a budget for souvenirs or items, something specific that they're looking for. So whether it's leather in Florence for your teenage girl or, a fake sword that catches their eye, giving them a budget eliminates conflict. All right, so now let's talk about family-friendly highlights. And I've chosen 4 cities here to talk about only because these are the most visited. So, of course, there's tons and tons of things to do. These are just some examples, some suggestions, and I'll be putting links in the show notes to the things that I mentioned. All right, so let's start off with Rome. What are some family-friendly things you can do in Rome? Well, for kids that are 6 and up, there is a fantastic gladiator school, and this is run by Gruppo Storico Romano, which is a historical group. They're preserving Roman history, and they put on this gladiator school. They get to dress up, train with swords, and they even earn a certificate. So this is something that kids can do with their parents. So it's for ages 6 and up. There are some tour companies that specialize in family tailored tours of the Colosseum, and they have skip the line access. Also in Rome, for the younger kids, there is a Bio Park Zoo. So this is inside Villa Borghese Gardens. And if you just need a break from museums, this is a great thing to do. So you can visit the Borghese Gardens and go to this small zoo. It's not the world's best zoo, but it is a zoo, and kids love animals, so this would be a nice way to take a break from historical sites. If you've got a Percy Jackson fan in your family, there are Percy Jackson themed tours of the Capitoline museums. So I'll put that in the show notes as well. So for those who have read the Percy Jackson series, that will definitely make this Capitoline Museum come to life. Also in Rome, as in every city, there are street food tours available. I recommend you take a street food tour in Trastevere and try the supli, the pizza, the gelato. I think this is a great activity for tweens and teens. Also in Rome, the Capuchin Crypts. This is just creepy enough to thrill older kids, something different, something that you don't see every day, are crypts. One thing that I did with my family when we visited Rome the first time is we climbed St. Peter Basilica's the dome. So believe it or not, you can climb up to the very, very top. And it's not easy, but it's worth the view. And if you're claustrophobic, I don't recommend it. But it was incredible. It was an incredible view, and something that I think school-age tweens and teenagers would enjoy. Let's move on to Florence. What are some things that you can do in Florence with a family? Well, there's the Leonardo da Vinci Museum. It's an interactive, hands-on museum exploring and using recreations of Leonardo da Vinci's inventions. And if you've got a science buff in your family, the Galileo Museum is very interesting. This is where science meets history. Another thing you could do in Florence is Piazzale Michelangelo. It's a famous piazza that overlooks the city of Florence. I don't know if you've seen on social media. This is the place where everyone goes to watch the sunsets over the city, and it gets pretty lively up there. So it's a great place for young kids to run around, to enjoy the sunset, bring some wine with you if you want. It's a lot of fun. The next activity I'm recommending is one of my favorites and something I've done with my family several times, and that is climb up to the top of the Duomo of Florence in the cupola. So like the cupola of St. Peter's Basilica, you can actually climb up, and it spirals around and up to the very top of the cupola, and you have this amazing view. So climbing something, I think, appeals to kids, and I know my children have really enjoyed these bird's eye views of the city. Anytime we go to a new city, we're always looking for a tower or a church cupola to climb. So the other recommendation right next to the Duomo of Florence is Giotto's Tower, a very famous beautiful tower that also affords you a beautiful view of Florence. And you can actually get a combo ticket from the official website, which I'll put in the show notes, to visit the Duomo, do the cupola visit, and Giotto's Tower. And it also includes the beautiful, beautiful Duomo Museum, which is right across from the Duomo itself. I highly recommend it. So look at that website. I believe they do have a family ticket. It's well worth the price. Let's move on to Venice. What can we do in Venice with the family? Well, you can go to Murano and Burano. There are glass blowing demos that you can watch and buy some glass. There's also the Natural History Museum in Venice. So if you need a break from art and history, you can go look at some dinosaurs, some fossils, which is a great option for younger kids. You can also find in Venice ghost and legend tours. So this is a great option for teens and tweens. Very fun. And there's also things like Vaporetto ride. So the Vaporetto is just the public transportation in Venice that runs on the canals. This is what people use to get around the city of Venice because there's no cars, obviously. So just a ride along the Grand Canal. There's a Vaporetto line that goes basically all around the island of Venice. And there's another one that goes out to the islands. So just a ride in a Vaporetto is fun for kids. So it's a lot cheaper than taking a gondola ride with the whole family. It's an affordable way, let's say, to see Venice. Let's move on to Milan. In Milan, I really love Parco Sempione. It's like Milan's Central Park. And it's a big park. It has in one area, if you're coming from the castle, it is to your right and the far end of the park. It's a playground area for kids. So this is rare in city centers in Italy. So great playgrounds, a little train to ride. So if you need some time for your kids to run around, this is a great place. So it's behind Castello Sforzesco. So Sforzesco is a massive castle in the center of Milan. So that's another thing you could do with your kids. The castle itself houses, I think, 12 museums. So, the museums themselves may not be so interesting to your kids, but just walking through the museums, you're exploring the castle. You can go all the way to the top of, I think they're called the ramparts. I don't know the correct terminology of the castle, but you can go all the way up there and it's pretty amazing. So if you don't want to get bogged down in the museums, I do recommend just walking through the castle and exploring it. It's well worth the time. And then the park that's behind it. Also in Milan, in Galleria Vittorio Emanuele, is the Leonardo 3 Museum. So this is a really fun, interactive museum. What they've done is they've taken Da Vinci's drawings and they've constructed some of his machines or reconstructed them. And it's an interactive exhibit of each machine. So if you have a very science-minded kiddo, this place is great. So it's small, but you could easily spend an hour or two there. I think it's well worth the money, and I believe they do have a family ticket. Also in Parco Sempione, there is a small aquarium that will delight little kids. It's a very tiny aquarium, but still worth a visit. It only costs a few euros. Another family-friendly activity in Milan is the terraces of the Duomo. So the Duomo of Milan, the Cathedral of Milan, is the most iconic, most well-known tourist spot in Milan. It's well worth your time. But a lot of people don't know that you can actually go up to the terraces and get a really wonderful view and also admire the architecture. So I think this appeals to kids. It does to mine for the many times I've gone there with my kids. And you have two options. So you can climb up the stairs to get to the terraces. It's really not that bad and it's a good workout. Or you can take an elevator. So there's also combination tickets, which include a visit to the Duomo Museum, and access to the terraces. So you can look for that kind of ticket. I've included the official website in the show notes, so check it out. My last tip for Milan is to take a day trip to Lake Como. You are very close to Lake Como, so you could take a train up there or just pay for a tour that will pick you up in Milan and take you to Como for the day. So again, tour companies or tour sites, I should say, like getyourguide.com. It has a great selection of day trips. All right, so those are my tips. It's not an exhaustive list, but just some ideas to give you as you're planning your trip and some activities that are, I believe, family friendly. Like I've mentioned throughout this podcast, I'll be putting those links in the show notes. In the show notes, you'll see official websites to the museums and the locations that I've mentioned. And I want you to know those are official websites. Those are not third-party websites, which I think it's important when you're planning a museum visit, a church visit, to go to the official websites unless you're going to use a private tour company to get in, get a private tour through a tour company. Do go to the official websites because there are a lot of sketchy websites, third-party websites out there that what they do is they actually get the ticket from the official website and then upsell it or charge you some fee that's unnecessary. I hope you found this episode helpful as you're planning your family vacation to Italy, and I'll leave you with just one more thought, and that's this. So here's the truth about traveling through Italy with kids. Will it be perfect? No, probably not. Will there be meltdowns? Most likely. But in the end, I really do believe it'll be an unforgettable family experience. You'll slow down, laugh at unexpected moments, and see Italy through the eyes of your children, which is priceless. So tailor your expectations, build in breaks, let your kids lead sometimes, and always say yes to gelato. Thanks for joining me on Travel Italia. If this episode gave you confidence to travel with your family, please share it with a fellow parent planning a trip or leave a review. Until next time, ciao, grazie e buon viaggio.